Hello, I am beyond excited to bring on our guest, Tom Ziglar. He's Zig Ziglar's son and currently is the CEO of the Ziglar Corporation. He's the author of Choose to Win, which is an incredible book, and he owns the Ziglar Show and is the host for that. And so, Tom, with that, welcome, my friend.
Skylar, it's good to be here. I'm excited about our show.
Fantastic. Me too. I wanted to start out with a question. I was listening to one of your other podcasts, and you had mentioned, right, one of Zig's beliefs was that success is the maximum utilization of the abilities God gave you. And so I'm sure you've seen many people who are not operating at their highest potential. So since I have you, right, I really look up to you and everything that you and your father have done and the impact you've had. I'm curious, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think people are not utilizing their abilities?
Boy, that's a great question. And there could be a number of reasons. One of the big ones to me is they don't have a clearly defined why, a purpose, a goal, something they're moving towards. And I was with a young man, his name is Caleb Miller. Dan Miller is his grandfather, who was 48 Days to the Work You Love. And Caleb, he asked me, he said, how do you know if you have a bad habit? And this is like a young guy, 25. And it's really a great question. And I said, well, you don't, unless you have a goal or objective you're going towards. For example, if lung cancer was your goal, smoking would be a great habit, right? I mean,
yeah.
And so why don't people reach their potential? It's because they don't have a goal or an objective that stretches them, that makes them go towards that. Another thing is it could be a fixed mindset. They are just totally locked into, this is who I am, no point in changing. I'm just going to go focus on what I'm good at and what other people think I'm good at. And if it gets difficult, then I'm going to find something else. And the reality is we can all learn, we can all grow, we can all go to that next level. Another reason is they've been given bad directions. One of my favorite stories from Dad is when he was starting his speaking career. He was, gosh, this is 60 years ago, before I was born. Just starting. He had the opportunity to go speak. He was doing it for free. He had to drive like 3 hours, in his car, pay his own gas. He'd love to get there early. So he gets into the community where he's going to speak, and he can't find the location. Can't find it. So he pulls over to the side of the road, walks in. There's a clerk behind the counter. He's got a name tag on. He's local. He shows him the address. Do you know where this place is? And the guy said, yeah, I do. And Dad said, here, handed the sheet of paper to him, write down the directions turn by turn, because I've got to get there. So he did. So Dad gets back in the car. He follows it turn by turn. And then an hour later, he was 30 miles further from where he was trying to go. So he pulled off to the side of the road, right? Well, was it his fault he was given bad directions? No, it wasn't. But it was his responsibility to go get the right directions. So there's two choices that could have happened right there. He could have sat on the side of the road and he could have said, you know what, my career is over. Those were influential people. They're going to put the word out that you can't count on Zig Ziglar. Nobody will ever book me again, right? Mm-hmm. Or he could, as fast as he could, find another place to get directions, which is what he did. He got the right directions and he got there. Because he allowed enough time, he still made it, and the rest is history. And so I think a lot of people in life have just been told, you can't do that. Why bother? You weren't born in the right place. You don't have that talent, and they don't even try. Well, those people, you've been given the wrong directions. Mm. And so you may not have a goal. You may not have the right directions. You may not know how. And so there's a bunch of reasons. But once you get a clearly defined goal and you take responsibility for finding the right directions, then it's time for the world to look out.
Man, that was a great answer. So it's not many things in life I've been realizing are a little bit more complex, right? And not as simple. They're multifaceted. However, I do love that conversation of stretching, right? Of stretching. And so when I started Rise Up Kings, it was interesting. I was at a place in my life where I was very comfortable. My business had created some success, Superior Restoration, and It had allowed me some space and I was comfortable, but it just didn't feel right. I didn't feel like I was fully operating at my best. And so when I started Rise Up Kings, I said, you know what, I'm going to create a goal so big that I need God to step in and fill the gap of that. Like I want to be able to create a goal so big that God would actually have to fill a portion of that, where it would require everything of me. But I also want to see God's faithfulness, because Rise Up Kings is a faith-based, organization. And so I had set a goal to launch this event within a 30-day period that I had been planning, like thinking in my mind for years. So I gave myself 30 days and went all out. And so I saw a different side of myself, and I started to stretch and push in ways that I hadn't in years. And so I don't know, I see a lot of people that kind of play it comfortable and play it safe on a regular basis. So I'm all about, I don't know, maybe sometimes too much, but I'm all about pushing people. I don't know. I love to.
Yeah. I have a quote that kind of sums up what you said. Your calling is not meant to fit who you are today, but who God created you to become.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if your calling's not bigger than you, then it's not allowing room for God to do what God does.
100%. Yeah. I got to see that. It was neat. After that first event, I just sat there and I went to church the next day. I have my events from Thursday to Saturday on purpose so we can have Sabbath on Sunday. And so while I was at church, man, I was listening to a song and it was just talking about God's faithfulness. And I had never, I hadn't, it was different to me that time, God's faithfulness. So it actually showed through in a whole different way. Like I remember just standing there like, man, thank you, God. Like this was like an incredible feat that just happened, like epic, incredible event. And it was, I really believe God had just such a huge role to play in that, but it was only because I took that chance and took that risk. It's a big risk sometimes. And so there's people that may be listening to this that are like thinking of, relaunching a business or pivoting or something big, but I would have them consider I don't know, it's worth it. It's worth the risk to see like what you're capable of. And I'm sure, yeah.
Dad, one of Zig Ziglar's quotes was, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly until you learn to do it well.
Mm.
And that's another example of a growth mindset, right? And it's all about the learning. It's all about who I can become. How do I go to that next level? We don't worry about, not pulling it off perfect. I mean, I'm sure when you look back at that moment of that 30-day blitz to make that thing happen, you have this whole pile of victories over here. And then you have this long list of, well, I'm going to do this different. And I'll do that a little bit. I'm going to start a little earlier. I'm going to get that help from those guys. I'm not going to use them anymore. And that's just the way it is, right? It's like every time we just raise our game a little bit.
Yeah. Speaking of Zig, so it's funny. My dad gave me, when I was 15 and a half, I joined a network marketing company. I don't know how they let me in at that young of an age, but my dad gave me the Ziglar CDs, some sales CDs. So that's where I first learned kind of how to sell and self-motivation. And we would go to Starbucks and he would read his book and I would have my headphones on listening to Zig Ziglar. And that was like a tradition we would go do. I would just go and listen to his stuff.
What company was that?
It was ACN.
Okay.
Do you remember ACN?
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day, it was ACN. And then right after that, I joined a company called World Financial Group.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yep. And I was just speaking to a guy right now that was with Primerica. Yeah. Have you ever spoken at any of those conferences or?
Not those specific companies, but yeah. And I grew up around, direct sales and network marketing.
Yep.
So, one of the things I hear over and over and over again is people say, yeah, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. And I got it. That's where I got my first Zig tape. And then they'll say, what the main thing I learned was personal growth and development. So it's a launching pad for a lot of people.
It is, and that's interesting. So I wonder where I got that. So, because I actually have these conversations somewhat regularly where, people are asking me, hey, what's a good business to kind of start out in? And so I love direct sales, network marketing, because the amount of personal growth and personal development. So I don't know if I got that bug from the direct marketing business I was in or from the Ziglar tapes I was listening to. So I don't really know what started my foundation of personal growth. That now I'm curious. I'm like, man, maybe I've been pointing people in the wrong direction. Maybe I should have just been giving them Ziglar CDs instead of telling them to join a network marketing company. But that's interesting. Yeah, he was. Yeah, I mean, just this powerful stuff. That's why I'm so excited. Like to just, I don't know, ask some questions. So I have a question. So how was it? And I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but how was it? And you don't have to say, because your response is usually it was kind of low pressure. He allowed you to kind of do what you want. But how was it growing up with Zig Ziglar? He seems like an exceptional person. And I'm curious, I would love some other response that maybe you haven't been able to share, because you had mentioned he was kind of low pressure. He allowed you to go and do the things that you wanted to do. And he really supported you I think you had mentioned, as long as you give your all, I think is what he mentioned. Like he's totally supportive of that. So anything else? How was it like kind of growing up with that legend?
Just a couple of things. As good as his public image was, as good as he was on stage, he was even better off stage.
Wow.
Just the real deal. So relational, so intentional. I mean, just unbelievably intentional. You know, one of the things that I don't share a lot is unbelievably competitive. So we would play golf, and it wasn't that he was trying to beat me. He was just competing with himself constantly. He wanted to, and you know, there was nothing that he would take, you know, get more satisfaction out of a good shot, for example, unless it was me hitting a good shot. So, you know, when you think of the ultimate dad, it's like this dad that's like all in 100%, trying to win, trying to be their best, and then they get excited when they get beat by their son, right? You know, you hear the other side of it sometimes, and it's, you know, and it's just not good. I remember I played college golf, and we were playing in a Texas father son, and every year we would play in this. It was like a tradition, and I was out of school. You know, I was like probably 27, 28, so I wasn't playing that much anymore. And then Dad was, you know, gosh, he must have been around 70. How old was he? No, he was in his 60s. Anyway, we get done. He didn't play very well. It's like 110 degrees. And the only way we have a chance of even finishing in the top 10 is if we both for 3 days shoot 5 or 6 shots each better than we ever do. Okay. So there's no way, right? I mean, there's just no way we're going to do that. So it's like 110 degrees. And we get done, and we played okay. And Dad wants to go hit more balls. I'm just sitting here going, it's okay. We had fun. That's how competitive he was, because he just knew that he could do better next time.
Man, that's interesting. That tenacity just to improve, right? Just that strong desire just to become better. This is interesting. This is turning more into like a human potential, kind of human optimization kind of conversation. But I love that, right? How can we like become the best versions of ourselves?
So this is kind of a story that'll make sense. I asked Dad later in life, because he didn't drink. He quit drinking when I was a little boy. And I said, Dad, did you ever drink enough, you know, to get intoxicated? And he said, one time. That's why I quit. And I go, why? And he said, I liked it too much. And so this was a man who had that kind of that mentality of I'm all in, right? And he had the ability to focus only on the things that would take him closer to his goals. So he knew that going down the wrong path, whether it was alcohol or gambling or anything, that could lead to some bad places. But he had this character and this decision-making ability to take that tenacity and focusing on all the things that would benefit him and everybody else. And you don't see that very often. But that's when you see somebody who's driven, they usually have the kind of, I call it that pit bull mentality where they just latch on and won't let go. And that's where he was with personal growth. I mean, every single day of his life, it was about what can I learn, internalize, and simplify to share with someone else for their benefit. I mean, that was it. And he knew
Wow.
as a believer, as a Christian, that the better example he set and the more love and kindness and generosity and, kind of that approach that he presented it, and the more he walked the talk, the easier it was going to be for people to, say, hey, I want what you've got. He was never condemning or against, or I call it the hammer. He never used the truth as a hammer. It was always, hey, man, there's so many benefits over here. Why don't you check it out? And then they would see his life and his approach. And that's what attracted people to Dad.
Interesting. They, your first chapter in your book is your why. I think, I don't recall the exact statement, but it's specifically on like the why and how powerful the why is. And so what he did was Ziglar, he basically just focused his energy around his why, and anything that wasn't in alignment with that, right? He would make decisions in a way that didn't take him away from his why. So I'm in the process of that right now, right? Like, so I do drink, I have some drinks every now and then, but it's not fully serving me. You know what I mean? And so sugar, I just eliminated sugar from my diet, not because I'm worried about gaining weight or anything else, but because I can tell it takes away from my mental clarity when I eat a decent amount of sugar or the night before or binge on something. So my why is becoming so strong, right? I want to be the guy that's 70, 75 years old, that's up on stage, that's as sharp as anybody else. You know what I mean? And so those things that are going to take me away from that, I'm starting to have more discipline in removing, because I really do. I want to be like, that's kind of my why, right? My end game is, hey, I want to be impacting people, and I want to be doing it in a way where I'm showing up with everything that God, all my abilities that God had given me. And so if speaking or if communicating or sharing information is that, then, maybe drinking or eating badly or, whatever that looks like, that should not be present in my life. So I love hearing about ultra disciplined people. Something about that I didn't know he was like that. That's interesting. How does that show up in your life, the discipline of that stuff? Like, are you able to be as tight with that discipline or how?
In some areas, yes. And in some areas, no. Dad was, man, he was just who he was.
Yeah.
There's a question that he asked me, and this is for everybody listening. This is just a great question. So you might want to write this one down, because it'll just tell you. When I was about 20, I was in college. I had my whole summer lined out, tournaments I was going to play, practice sessions. And I get home and Dad said, hey, I need you a favor. Your mom and I are going to Australia in a few weeks. We're going to be there almost a month. I need you to look after the house. And because it was during the summer, I was home from college. That's where I was staying. And I said, well, Dad, I'm happy to do that. But the reality is those Australians are really mean and dangerous. And those bags you have to carry are heavy. You should take me with you so I can carry your bags. Right? Because I'm gaming for going to Australia. I mean, you're 20. Who doesn't want to go to Australia? And he said, well, do you still want to be a professional golfer? And that was my goal at the time. And I said, yeah. And he said, and you've got your summer all worked out with your tournaments and your practice and all that. And I said, yeah. He said, well, let me ask you a question. Will going to Australia, will that take you closer to or further from your goal?
Wow.
So that's like some serious ninja black belt stuff right there. So if you have this big why, okay, this giant compelling why, and that's what you That's what you tell yourself you're going after. You can literally ask yourself that question on anything. Will eating this take me closer to or further from? Will doing that, will buying that, whatever your goals are, that is a great clarifying question. And, incidentally, we have a certification program where we certify people to train our stuff. And when they graduate, there's a code of ethics that we give them. So everybody who's certified has this code of ethics. And we talk about, hey, we don't use profanity on stage. We don't tell any inappropriate jokes. And if you're representing the Ziglar name, you don't drink alcohol. Because, like you said earlier, it lowers your clarity. It just takes a tiny edge off of your ability to be the best you can be. And so our goal is to be the best we can be.
Wow, that's interesting. That's so yeah, it's interesting. I spent some time with Tony Robbins, and so he hasn't drinking for, I don't know, maybe similar to Zig, right? For just a tremendous amount of years, because it just took him off his game. Like, he didn't eat chocolate for like 30 years. Like, he was just very focused on his end game, on his end results. So that gets me thinking, the whole alcohol conversation. So I'm surprised you guys have that, be one of the code of ethics. That's I guess it's high performance, right? It's high performance. It's
absolutely. Now they can, it's when they're representing the Ziglar name. So if they're out teaching a Ziglar course, so
yeah,
it's not saying alcohol is wrong, or it's just saying, hey, you know what, if you're going to carry the Ziglar name and you're going to perform, and you're with the client who's asking you to come in, whether it's before, during, or after, that's not what Zig would do. So you don't do it.
Love it. Tom, what's something that a lot of people don't know about you, maybe you don't talk about regularly? Something, and this is actually one of my favorite interview questions. It's tell me something that you normally wouldn't tell during an interview. But so it brings some interesting responses. But yeah, what's something people don't know? A lot of people don't know.
Let's see here. Well, I'm a conservative tree hugger. How about that?
Are you? You're a big environmentalist guy?
And it's for different reasons. I look at the creation and I think, golly, what an amazing thing. And then I look at the chemicals and the pesticides and the GMOs and, the litter and the things that we do. And I ask myself a question, and the question is God's provision enough? And it always is, right? And so anytime we try to game something, we have to ask ourselves, hey, if we're gaming it, is there any negative consequence to that? Is there a negative situation out of that? And if there is, why are we doing it? So, so I'm a conservative Texan, and thinks, you know what? God's creation deserves a little respect.
Love it. That's awesome. I've never heard that term, conservative tree hugger. So that's a good one. So you and your dad are, I would say, like the kings of kind of inspiration. And right now is such a challenging time. So many people that are unmotivated, that have dropped their habits, that have, they had maybe previously used to get them to a level of success. And so it's a challenging time. So what would you say people can do right now to stay motivated, stay inspired, while, our country is just so divided, and, some people are still kind of locked inside or not able to go to gyms? What would, some words of wisdom be around that topic?
Yeah, I think for most people, COVID-19, how much weight you've gained since March. There's a couple of things. I'll tell a little story. There was these two hikers hiking up in Alaska, all day long hiking, a lot of elevation. They finally get into where they're going to make camp. It's by a stream, beautiful. in the valley, kind of a nice spot. And they set up their tents, they get dinner going, and it's just time to relax. So they're unlacing their boots. They just about have their boots off. And one of those big Alaskan brown bears comes running into camp. And the first hiker yells, "Hey, we're going to get eaten by the bear, run." And he looks over at the second hiker, and the second hiker is putting on his boots as fast as he can. And he looks down at him and he says, get up, we got to run. And the second hiker says, "I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you." And it's kind of an old story, but I think that's the story that we're in right now. Is we all think our battle is with COVID-19. We think it's with the social unrest that we have very little control over. But actually our battle that's not the battle. The battle's between our ears, right? It's our mindset. And it's actually, if you change every problem into a possibility, then it's a target rich environment right now. It's the best time in the world ever, with the right mindset and the desire to figure out what problems do people need solving. It's an incredible time. You can't do it necessarily the same way. And I've actually found that a lot of people, I call it peeling back the onion, where, the first part was everything that they were used to went away, right? The work schedule changed. Maybe they lost their job. And then they got fearful of losing the stuff,
Yep.
And so stuffitis is a big problem in our culture, where we get addicted to the stuff. And as that started becoming more uncertain, and then we saw the impact of this, we said, wait a second, what is important? Well, it's the pillars that you talk about. It's our faith, it's our family, it's our friends, right? It's the key stuff, the stuff that matters. And so there's actually a great number of people who have stood back and said, golly, I've been trading my soul for some trinkets. And what's the point? Maybe I should go do what I was built to do. Okay. And so what I would tell people who are stuck right now, who were like, golly, what do I do? And, it's hard for me to get motivated. The number one lesson I learned from Dad was you gotta be intentional about your input, what you listen to, what you read, who you associate with. And you got to turn off the anti-social media. You've got to turn off the news. You've got to tune out the people around you who are preaching doom and gloom. And you got to dig into why you're here. What's your purpose? What is it? What's passionate in your heart? A lot of people of faith will come to me and they'll say, I'm not sure what my purpose is. And if you're a believer, the reason that a lot of believers don't say this is my purpose is because what if you're wrong?
Sure. It could be scary.
Right? Like if you put a stake in the ground and you're wrong, and that's not the way it works, right? That's a lie. And so I say, well, what are you passionate about? What makes your heart sing? So that's the first question I'd really get around. And then I would ask myself, okay, well, that makes my heart sing. Who made you that way? Wait a second. That's not a surprise to the creator of the universe. He knows what makes your heart sing. And so a lot of times when we start digging into what our passion is, it takes us to our purpose. And usually there's a journey that happens like this. There's 3 circles. One is you identify what makes my heart sing. What am I passionate about? Number 2 is you get real clarity on your gifts and talents. What problems do people naturally bring you? Is it business problems, relationship problems? And then the 3rd circle is, man, what's the greatest obstacle you've overcome, the biggest challenge that you've had to deal with in your life? And that one could be something beyond your control. It could be an illness. It could be a broken family when you were a kid. It could be an accident. It could be anything. Or you could have made some pretty bad decisions and had to live with the consequences, right? But you overcome it. You figure it out. You get some help, some mentoring, some coaching, and you learn some processes. And so a lot of times where people really need to look hard is where those 3 circles intersect. What makes your heart sing? What's the biggest challenge you've overcome? And what are your gifts and talents? When those three overlap, and that's a sweet spot.
That's
So
great.
I would dig
Yeah,
into that.
that's fantastic. There's a lot of people right now that are searching and trying to find out their purpose and what they're passionate about now that they've either been laid off, right? They've been laid off from their job, or their job's no longer fulfilling, or they're working from home, or there's just a lot of reasons why people are searching out. I think that's a very relevant conversation is, right, how do we find out what the next stage of my life is going to look like? Right.
Yeah, and the reason I think it's such a time of opportunity and possibility is, well, just the metrics. Around 15% of the population worked from home before this. Now it's over 60%. And when everything goes back to, where we're not worried about the virus anymore, maybe we've got a cure, maybe we've got a treatment, whatever it is, it's probably going to go back to around 30 to 40% are still going to be working from home. But the skill set of leading a remote team is different than an office environment.
Yeah, what is that? So that's interesting, because there's a lot of people, right? Leaders are now having to lead these remote teams, and I think it would require some different skill sets. So what have you done research on that to see like what's needed, or what do you see, like what leadership skills, what abilities are needed now for leaders in this new age, this remote age?
I'm going to simplify it just to make the explanation easy, but I'm going to compare it to the traditional managerial, top-down, authoritative, positional, do it because I said so, chain of command leader. Okay, that's the way that America's been running for probably 80 years, 100 years, and that's the last 10 years that's kind of eroded away, but only a little bit each year. And we know that millennials don't like that, right? Young people do not like that. And so people who've been working with that age group have already kind of migrated away. Now, most people socially do pretty good. So if you work for an authoritative, do it because I said so boss in an office environment, we gather around and we support their weak spots, right? Why do we do that? Because we know they're a person. We have coffee pot conversations. We go to lunch with them. We have side jokes and humor. And so we know they're a real person. You take that same high D driver style over a Zoom call and says, okay, there were 3 things I asked you to do last week. Give me a report. Man, that doesn't fly. That doesn't, on a Zoom call with no relational context, that's a rough go. And top performers, they have the pick, right? They get to pick where they go and work and who they work with and who they work for. And so now what do we need? Well, I call it the coach style. A leader tells, a coach asks. A manager tells, a coach asks. A manager is about results. A coach is about growth. And when things change real fast, like it has, what do I want a team? A team that's used to getting results, or a team that's used to growing? Right? Because if I'm a results-oriented team, which was fine and everything's smooth, then I'm just going to try harder what we were doing. If I'm a growth-oriented group, then it's like, fantastic, what can we learn now? And they're the ones that pivot, innovate, and dominate, right? Coaches are collaborative. Coaches ask fantastic questions. Coaches tap into what motivates each person on their team. And if you have a great coach leading a remote team, they're not going to miss a beat, right? Because they're going to do the little extra things that you've got to do in a relationship. And it's just harder than it is face to face.
Interesting. What's a good coaching question to ask like team members, or a couple of good questions that you've seen work well, or is it just a style of asking?
I'll just set up a scenario. So I'll say, let's just role play for a second. So Skylar, you're a sales guy, and I'm your coach manager. So Skylar, what do you want to do this year? I mean, what is your goal for the end of the year?
I want to be able to produce 1 million in revenue and just, make sure I'm staying balanced.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I could really get behind that. I love that. That's bigger than than what you've done in the past. What kind of attitude and character qualities do you think you would need in order to hit that?
Need to definitely be more disciplined and more focused.
Awesome. How would you develop those?
Yeah, I would need to, some accountability would definitely help, but I would need to maybe start tracking some more things.
Okay. And so what I would do is I would ask the question on attitude. I'd say, what kind of effort do you need? These are activities that produce income, calls, prospecting, whatever. And then what kind of professional skills do you need to up your game? Okay. And you would tell me what you need to develop. And I would say, you know what? Why don't you write out a plan of what you're going to do? Does that sound fair? And so you write that plan out and you present it to me, and I literally give you a high five, and then I ask you the question, Skylar, is it okay if I'll hold you accountable to your goals?
Yes.
See, it's like,
Full buy-in. It's a way to get full, but that's such a different style than I think most people are used to operating out of, but it's so much more effective. It's easy. It's way easier to say, hey, I need you to do 1 million this year. I need you to be more disciplined and focused. Cool. Okay, great. Awesome. Again, it's way easier to do that. However, it's like, even you just asking me that, it's a totally different feel than when I'm getting to like personally think like, what do I need to do? Most people know what they need to do to get to the next level, but it's that coach style that, man, that was great. I'm glad we role played that. It reconnected me with the idea that even with my team, I really need to do a better job just asking them questions, as opposed to, I feel like I'm a pretty good, we have a lot of autonomy, and I consider myself a coach with the team. But sometimes I get away from asking those questions and letting them come up with the answers,
Right. And if we had more time, I'd say, well, Skylar, $1 million, what does that mean? What's that mean? Why do you want $1 million in revenue? And then you might say, well, that means I'm going to make X and I can pay off that student loan. Oh, that's fantastic. Why do you want to pay off that student loan? Oh, well, if I pay off the student loan, then we can start putting together that down payment for the house we want to buy. Man, that's, wow. And when you get that house, what does that do for you? Oh, then we get to start our family. Right. And so now I know what you're motivated for. It's not the $1 million. It's not the student loan. It's not even the house. It's the family. Right. And so when I come back in, and because now I know what really motivates you. And if I have 5 people on my team, all 5 of them are going to give me different answers, and that's fantastic. I don't care what their answers are. I just want to know how, as the collaborative coach, I can support them in achieving what it is that's important to them. Because if I know what your dream is and I can help you get your dream, and every day is about getting closer to your dream, then now you're working for a dream instead of a paycheck. And those people are self-motivated.
Man, that is powerful. I was just having a sales call with a person, and I was starting to tap into his why, but I didn't go deep enough. I realized as I was on the call, I'm like, I did not go deep enough on this sales call. I could just totally tell. And so I'm definitely, I hope, I've done some training around that with my team, but nowhere near the level that we could be operating at. So I would love to check in with my general manager and some of my executive team to make sure that they know all of their team's whys. Everybody on their team, like, they know their deep why of why they're willing to come in and work hard and put in the hours. It's such a powerful thing. And it really shows that you care too. On multiple levels, that's an effective way to lead.
Absolutely. People, that quote, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them. And
Yep.
it's the about them that matters.
So you're saying this is even more important though on virtual teams and remote teams.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason is, well, let's just talk about what the average person's doing now. They're at home, they're disconnected, everything's upside down. They feel threatened. Even if the company's doing solid, they're not sure it's going to last because all they hear is the grim, bad news of what's going to happen. So they start to doubt, they start to worry, and they get problem focused instead of solution focused. That creates a spiral. And so if my coach, if my team member, if my manager, whatever the title is, if they call me and they say, "Hey, how are you doing today? Man, let's talk about what it is where do you want to be at the end of the year? Let's get excited. Let's focus on solutions." And, growth oriented. Here's the thing. Every business, their clients, their customers that they serve are facing different problems than they were 6 months ago. So what we've got to figure out is how can we solve their problems? And when we get laser focused on solving problems, then we'll do well.
Great. Man, hopefully the people that are listening, most of the people listening are business owners or CEOs. However, if you're not, like the skill, or even if you are, the skill of becoming a better leader is, never stop growing in that area. It's such a critical skill that when you think you know it all, you're kind of screwed because the times are changing. The times regularly change, right? The leaders that thought they knew it 20 years ago are relearning everything right now. So it's, hopefully you guys take that to heart. Like, hey, let's continue to be the best leaders that we can be by making these just important changes, important upgrades in our leadership style. And Tom, as we kind of close out, what are you working on? What are some of the big things that you're doing, and how can people benefit from some of those things?
The big things, I was looking at our corporate company mission statement, and it's changed. It's a little different now than it was 10 years ago. But it's really a reflection of where we are now. And so our mission is to encourage, transform, equip, and support people in 4 areas. The first one is people who are intentional about building a legacy. I get a lot of joy in that. Legacy is when you teach and transfer the wisdom, the knowledge, the information that allows somebody to make good decisions, right? So we work with people who have been successful and they're at a pivot point, and they're thinking, what am I going to do with the rest of my life that's really going to matter? Then the other 3 areas that we work in as an organization where we encourage, transform, support, and equip is coaches, speakers, and trainers. And so we license them to use our material to take back to their own company or to go out and create business on their own. That's how we multiply, right? That's how we go out into the world. We have over 300 certified speakers and trainers around the world, over 100 coaches now, and the Choose to Win coaching system. So we're just blessed and able to do that. So that's where most of my time is. It's the quote behind me: you can have everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. And so if you say, hey, I use the Ziglar goal setting system to achieve a goal, I'll give you a high five. If you say, I taught the Ziglar goal setting system to my team and one of my team members bought a house because of it, then I'll do the Snoopy dance, right? Because what you just showed me was legacy, because you took something that you learned and taught it to someone else. And that's what we've got to do right now. Too many people in the world have been given the wrong directions. They're hungry for the right directions. And not only do we need to give them the right directions, but we got to equip them to turn around and teach those directions to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. The conversation, I mean, I don't want to go back to this, but the conversation you mentioned about legacy, where legacy is not just like handing some wealth off to a family, right? It's about teaching them the wisdom of creating wealth, or the wisdom of managing wealth, or it's that's a new definition for me, and something I was kind of getting out of your book too. And so,
Yeah. Mark Batterson said that inheritance is what you leave to someone. Legacy is what you leave in someone.
Man,
So
that's
my quote is, legacy is preparing those you love to grow through life's most difficult challenges.
beautiful. And everybody has a different version of what legacy they're going to leave. You know what I mean? So that's your legacy, right? Is having people grow through the challenges and things that they go through. And then on your book, man, your book, fantastic book. So for those of you guys that haven't read it, Choose to Win is a solid book. I mean, a lot of wisdom. I mean, years of wisdom in that book. I'm really enjoying. I've enjoyed reading that book. I mean, every chapter is like right on from everything that I truly believe in. Like I really do believe in like where you're going and how you teach and the mindsets that you teach. So Choosing to Win's a fantastic book. And I know you have your podcast too. That you're working on. So any other way that people can get in contact with you or follow you? Or
The easiest way is Ziglar.com. That's
okay.
our website. Everything's there. And you can reach me directly at my email, which is tom@Ziglar.com.
Okay. Sounds good. And last question for you, Tom. So what is, and I'm specifically curious, to what you think about this. What is the one habit or behavior that if people mastered would dramatically improve their chances of significant success? Like what's the one habit or behavior, would you say, that is worthy of mastering if you could pick one?
I will tell you this. So I have layers, okay? And so this one thing is found in all kind of my layers. And so I'm going to give it, I was asked one time at an event, what was the one thing that made Zig Ziglar who he was? And there's 100 things, right? But they said, no,
Yep.
I want the one thing. So this is what he did. And then I'll tell you what you can do, okay? So what he did is for 40 years, at least 3 hours a day, he would read, study, pray, meditate on God's word, great books, educational information, all that input, right? That's what he did so that he could internalize it and simplify it, put it in his own words, and then share it with someone else for their benefit. That's what he did every day. So because the motive was to help someone else, and the intentionality is, what else can I learn to help someone else? He became the person that he was. And so the one habit I would say is you choose your input. Okay. You choose what it is you're going to read, what you're going to listen to, who you're going to associate with. That will change your thinking, right? So your input changes your thought process, which changes your output, which changes your outcome. So what's the simple behavior you could do? What if you just started with 5 minutes a day, learning something new? 5 minutes every day, I'm going to learn something new. And then I'm going to simplify it and I'm going to share it with somebody else. Could be a phone call, could be a text, could be a direct message, could be an email. And I'm going to share it with them for their benefit. And you did that every day for a year. How much would that 5 minutes change your life?
And that is fire. That's huge. I love that. Okay. Not only just learning something new, but simplifying it and then teaching it to somebody.
Yeah, teaching it's the key, sharing it. And I try to do that every day. So my wife gets the brunt of it.
My wife doesn't listen to me anymore about those things.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it I use in my presentations and I share. I'm doing so many webinars now and I'm always bringing something up.
Yeah.
But that's the idea is you go into the reading. What can I learn that's significant that I can share with someone else for their benefit? And you choose what you start reading and listening to differently.
Man, that was a fantastic. Well, Tom, dude, I had a great time, brother. This was very enjoyable and actually very insightful. I'm probably going to listen to it again so I can pull some of those nuggets and actually write them down and then teach somebody a couple of those things. I appreciate you being on this episode, and yeah, I love everything that you're doing and the impact that you're making in this world. So keep it up.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom.